I'm not joking when I say I found this game because I looked up games similar to Cry of Fear. Cry of Fear was this perfect indie horror game that set you up on an adventure and kept the depressive tone and atmosphere consistent throughout the entire game. The characters and enemies, although very simple in their design, were downright horrific and felt tortured and cursed to attack Simon, almost being forced to with the hope that Simon would finally put them down. I'm bringing all this up because similar to why Cry of Fear was so effective, one of my favorite horror games, Lost in Vivo gave me that exact same effect. Created by Akuma Kira, the development started in 2016 after a small but successful Kickstarter campaign of $5,300. Now the name Kira may sound familiar, as they were also the developer behind Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion, another indie game under the umbrella company Lag Studios. Compared to Spooky's, which consisted of a development team of 2 people, Lost in Vivo was developed solely by Kira. Now just by seeing clips of the game, beyond its similarities to Cry of Fear, elements of other games such as Silent Hill and Resident Evil are actively represented.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill scent.
Not only through the pixelated style graphics, forcing your brain to fill in the details of what you're looking at, but also through the sound effects, which, similar to Resident Evil, take emphasis over the music itself, which would make sense as Kira used games like Silent Hill as a reference point when making this game. The story itself is rather simple to follow. As you're walking your dog during the brightest convectional rainfall ever, water slowly starts building until your dog is washed away down a drain, forcing you into the sewer to find him. As you progress further into the As you progress further into the sewer, following the sounds of your dog barking, the sewer walls slowly start decaying, and the wide sewer tunnels start to become narrow hallways. It's unclear if this transformation is actually happening, or the result of reality and your hallucinations blurring together. This continues as you go from the sewers to a subway, all the way to the dark dirt tunnels. The enemies you face, similar to Cry of Fear, are distorted figures with humanoid features. Whether that be features we usually recognize in humans like skin, hair, and stature, these things are grotesque warps of flesh, bone, and skin, merely taking the shape of animals and humans. The further you travel, the less the enemies try to hide these features. Knowing they already lured you in, enemies start to turn into masses of flesh and meat. What the fuck? Looking less clean and harder to mistake as something from this world. Throughout the game, you encounter audio logs and notes. The notes seem to display someone's mind slowly breaking down over time, actively seeing the progression of their mental state get worse and worse the farther they go in. Mental illness plays a big role in this game, the game's title being a reference to in vivo exposure, a real therapeutic method of confronting an individual with what they fear the most. The entire game is a mental test where you as the protagonist are forced to confront their fears. The claustrophobic walls, the confusing twists and turns of the sewers, the blurred reality between the distorted environments you're thrown into. The only normal thing being your dog, who quite literally has a service vest as your symbolic guardian from this exposure therapy. As for the audio logs, or as the game calls them, lost tapes, rather than simply hear what's on the tapes, you get thrown into an environment disconnected from your own, forced to play through somebody else's nightmares, connecting how deep down in the sewer you are, in the tapes becoming more and more unsettling. Something I'd like to mention is that this game loves to fuck with you. And I don't mean in the sense of like jump scare baiting you. I mean in the sense of deleting your entire fucking save data and starting you from the beginning. Save erased? The fuck? Why would you do that? Alright. Awesome. It says save erased, so is my fucking save destroyed now? Stop, dude. Stop. Okay, they don't actually do that, but that's just one of the many ways Lost in Vivo messes with you mentally. Often during the game, beams of light shine down the sewer or light up a doorway in the subway, only for you to be stopped by an obstacle, either being a locked door or an area you just can't reach, mocking how close you are to escaping, but still reminding you of the situation you're stuck in. Being that a symptom of mental illness is a negative self-reflection of yourself, you aren't ever present in any mirror. However, later in the game, you do show up in a mirror, but not as a human. Instead, as a cockroach, usually perceived as the dirtiest and grossest creatures by society. Eventually, your own brain starts becoming your enemy, and I don't mean that figuratively, quite literally being insulted verbally by your own sentient brain. This isn't to say at any point in the game you are considered safe. Usually in horror games, it's an unspoken rule that a room with soft, melancholic music is considered a safe space from the outside world, to do things like save your game, or just gather your thoughts before heading back out into the world. Thus, players relax and let their guards down. However, this room was never established as an actual safe room. The first and second time when you go in this room, it'll be a normal safe room where you can save with no problem, but later in the game, not so much. Sure, they allow you to save, but since you're still you don't get to have a safe room. The music in Lost in Vivo is surprisingly good for how much it doesn't play in the game. I actually had one of their songs in my Spotify playlist even before playing it. That's how you know it's the good shit. Lost in Vivo's music was the culmination of Kira, Jaren Christ, and Nolan Reese. Each of them brought their own contributions to the soundtrack, which helped enhance the game's atmosphere. What makes Lost in Vivo's music so effective is its emphasis on sound design rather than instrumental music. Whether it's the sound of water when you're in the sewer, or long droning as you're navigating the subway, often the music will stop without any warning or fade, keeping you anticipated for something to happen. The game's audio often layers into its music, keeping you confused on what is and isn't diegetic to the game. You can really hear the inspiration from games like Resident Evil when listening to this game's music. You'll go from a track entirely made up of rusty pipes echoing in the distance, to a full Silent Hill style guitar track. Often music in horror games is overlooked, because if done right, you won't even notice it's there. It will just feel a part of the environment. People often consider Lost in Vivo's music as the theme song for loneliness and loss, especially when the game slows down and allows you to navigate the environment, making you miss the sequence with enemies, as often being alone is worse than being around monsters, even if they aren't human. I am planning on making a longer formatted video on this game, but I wanted to give a little preamble into what to expect, because between the enemies you face and the environment you're thrown into, it's clear that this story is being told through an unreliable narrator, and whether that's because of what's happening mentally or what we think is happening, only remains to be seen the farther we go in.